Hey, my clock says 11. So if you are still signing in and have not yet added your name and library to chat, please go ahead and do that. That's what's going to give your library credit for attending this meeting. So I do just want to let people know I we've never done this in Cass County before. I am moving from, I'm the only admin who is not currently housed in the admin office. So they are moving me to the admin office. Monday, I will now be at the admin office. But they haven't got my phone extension set up yet. So if you still need to call me, go ahead and use the phone number that's attached, like in the list, and they can transfer me to admin. Hopefully that'll go smoothly. I know nothing about it. I just tell my tech people this is what I need, and hopefully they'll do it for me. But anyway, if you need to contact me, use the old number. The old email will be fine. It'll still go through. So now, enough about me. Let's just dive in here. I saw, just noticing this month, some things going back and forth on the listserv about making sure we're transiting things in a manner that protects our items to the best of our ability. It is kind of, you put that TV program or movie case into a padded thing and you send it on its way and you hope for the best for the couriers. But if you are a new library, especially, I would encourage you to look through the materials best handling practices document. So those are just kind of the guidelines that the consortium go by for transiting from things from one place to another. You can find that on the Missouri Evergreen website under member resources and CERC training materials. So if you have any questions, that probably will answer them. But, the listserv is there for questions. And I know when we joined, we didn't understand the whole process all the way. So some people kind of had to help us along on understanding, okay, this is how you do it. So anyway, check that out. And if you have questions, get on the listserv and your fellow CERC people will help you along. So I want to turn it over to Heather from MLC. She was going to talk about a setting that they are using and kind of just inform us a little bit more about it.
Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. And I'm just going to watch chat in case my mouth is moving and someone's telling me I'm on mute. Okay. So I wanted to talk about a setting called Holds Go Home. And it's one that the MLC libraries have chosen to implement, and one that it didn't seem like there was common knowledge about it in MEC, but one that we found when we were looking at getting our things set up. So we've been working together as a consortium for a few decades now, and so we have faced the problem that every consortium faces, which is how do you share things with one another very freely while also making sure that your materials are serving your tax-paying base first. And the way that MEC has chosen to do this is age hold protection. So we say if you're from another library, you're not allowed to place a hold on this title or material for a certain amount of time so that we can ensure that our patrons' holds are being filled by that material first. That there is a setting in Evergreen that is called Holds Go Home. There's actually two, but basically Holds Go Home. And what that means is if one of your patrons places a hold, then your item will fill that hold before other holds in the queue. And what we have decided to do is use Holds Go Home so that a Ferguson item will serve a Ferguson patron first, a Kirkwood item will serve a Kirkwood patron first. And we have combined that with a shorter age hold protection rule. We've moved it down to, most of our libraries down to 1 month. And some of them are not using age hold protection on their new materials at all. because our goal is to make sure that our patrons are being served first. But if our patrons are not using those things, we want those things to be circulating freely throughout MEC. Plus, shelf space does get limited in the news section. So making sure that those things are going out when they can is a real goal of ours. So this, I wanted to let everyone know about it because I think it will really benefit patrons if we can shorten age hold protections. We stop seeing those messages in PAC telling them they're not allowed to place those holds. I think it's a really unpleasant patron experience. And I think it's difficult, especially for the small libraries with small collections. Their patrons are basically not able to place holds on things that their libraries don't own for sometimes for months. And I think this setting has the potential to really alleviate that problem if we can combine it, if libraries choose to combine it with shorter age hold protection rules. So most of our libraries have moved down to 1 month, some of them not using age hold protection. I think, of course, we'll reevaluate after a couple of months and see if we can make that even shorter. But I wanted to let other libraries know about it since it seemed like it might not be in common usage in the consortium. So I'm not sure I will be able to answer the absolute most technical questions, but if anyone had questions, I can try to answer them, or of course we can get them to Equinox, who will certainly be able to answer them. But I just wanted to encourage people to think about it.
I did have a little bit more information from Lena at Equinox. She said MEC already has a setting in place consortium-wide for items to go home at least every 6 months to fill holds, if a hold exists to fill it. So that setting is consortium-wide across the board already. But what Heather is talking about is a shorter period of time that do you know what you set it at?
So Holds Go Home would always be in place for your library. That is not based on time. It's just always in place. And then if you chose, you could combine it with a shorter age hold protection for your new items, because you would have that guarantee that if one of your patrons placed a hold, it would come back to serve your patrons. But if no one at your library has put a hold on it, it can be circulating throughout MEC and then coming back to your library as needed, not just every 6 months, but if they placed a hold after 3 weeks. This solves another problem that could occur, which is when a long published book suddenly becomes popular or a movie comes out, those things don't have age hold protection on them anymore. If your item goes across the state, it might not come back before that 6 months is up, but this could help your materials come back to you so they'll be serving your patrons when they're not serving others.
A little history behind why we started doing this. It's a balancing act because we were trying to take some of the pressure off the courier system. Whereas, like, say, Cass County had borrowed a book from us, and rather than it coming to us, it would maybe go to North Kansas City to fill a hold, and we would get our hold filled from a closer library. Just to, if that book from Cass County gets returned to me, it's going through a couple, 3 different hubs. Whereas, going straight to North Kansas City would only go through one hub. If I got my copy, say, from Caruthersville, it would only go through one hub. So that was the history of why we weren't using Holds Go Home, was because we were about to collapse the whole courier system.
That was going to be my question, Ron, is how that works alongside the proximity settings, because I was just thinking of, like, if it recalled my hold from, like, North Kansas City versus, Web City is 10 minutes away from me and they have that exact same book.
So I don't have a lot of expertise here, but I think the difference is, if there was a hold that was placed and it was closer to you, it would always come to you from that closer place. It would only go home to you if there was no other thing in place. So assuming that, I'm at Ferguson Public Library and I wanted to request something, the Ferguson copy is someplace else, but there's a closer copy. I'm always going to get the closer copy if it's available. If it's not available, and the Ferguson Library is the only one that holds the item, what will happen if your Ferguson patron puts a hold on it, it would come to them before it would fill holds other places because Ferguson's actually the owning library. So with popular items, I think the issue would not be at all that you do more courier stuff. What would happen is you'd get the closest one to you. But if it's something that's not super popular or doesn't have a whole lot of items, your item would come back before it would fill something for some other library.
I'm not exactly, I pulled up the documentation in the Evergreen, you know, like the Evergreen, the big Evergreen documentation. And this is what it says. Holds Go Home and Holds Always Go Home allows libraries to determine how long they want to allow items to transit outside of the item's home library before it must return to its home library to fulfill any holds that are to be picked up there. So if you are a multi-branch library, like Cass, it would be like, you know, the items that are assigned to NRC, that's what it would be looking for an NRC patron who has a hold on an NRC book, or a Harrisonville patron who has a hold on a Harrisonville book. It's by location. So if you have a single library, it's not quite the issue because you're the owning library of all of your collection. But if you're a multi-branch library, that would be another thing that would potentially change how you might want to look at what you're doing, because does that make sense?
I have a question, just a clarification question. One, I am super excited that this conversation is being had. This is something I've been bugging people that I talk to about. I have also been part of a consortium where we did not have anything for age-hold protection at all. And it's something that I have always used the vernacular of local hold prioritization. Is that the same as Holds Go Home? It's just different language. Okay. And two, the reason I'm asking this is because it was my understanding when we joined that it was turned on and that your local holds were already scheduled to go home. So am I not correct in that?
Well, they're scheduled to go home at least every 6 months. At least that's what Lena said.
Well, I thought it was if your patron had a hold on it, it's going to go home no matter what, right? That's what I was told.
That's not my understanding based on our conversations with Equinox, but it would be worth confirming with them, because that is what we were trying to achieve with putting this setting into place. Technically, there are two Holds Go Home. There's Holds Go Home, and then there's, not to get too crazy technical, and then there's traditional with Holds Chase Home. And one of those is Holds Go Home to fill a hold no matter what. And the other one is Holds Go Home considering proximity and, you know, considering a couple of convenience factors. That's the page that Rhonda was reading from documentation. I put a link in chat for those who enjoy reading technical documentation. You can find it there. Holds are complex. I mean, knowing exactly how this is going to affect the hubs and courier situation, we can't say exactly. We can just do the best research that we can, make educated decisions, and then reconsider them down the road. If it alleviates some of the age hold protection pain points, might be worth transiting a few more items because we can get them out the door sooner and across the state sooner than we otherwise might be able to.
Go ahead.
I guess my other question is with us having this conversation, is this a setting that is allowable per library where we can choose that? Or are we bringing it up here so that we can then make a decision consortium wide, whether it's turned on or not?
So we have this setting back in 2022. We talked about it in a hold subcommittee, and Mickey, who was the director at the time, didn't like that and didn't really want it to be like a consortium wide thing. But we opted to do it. So we have been, and we have it now.
And
So-
maybe that's why my assumption is that holds go home is turned on, is because maybe that's what we ended up turning on when we migrated. So maybe that's why I'm thinking that, wait a second, isn't this already a thing?
Well, and that was our understanding too, is that our patrons' holds would always be first, but we found that in practice, it just didn't work that way all the time. It would get overridden by somebody at a closer library or whatever. So it just wasn't working out that way in practice. So that's part of the reason we went with that setting, was to make sure. And it's only for holds, and our patrons don't place a ton of holds. So our stuff is still free to circulate, but then if somebody does actually place a hold, then it will come back to us.
I think a really good example of what Heather was trying to outline with an older book gaining popularity again. What was everybody's experience with getting holds filled for Hillbilly Elegy? So that was one that really took on a new life once he was announced as the vice presidential pick.
We actually bought more copies of that.
We did too.
Yeah, to benefit our patrons, just because it is crazy right now.
I had a question about our check-in modifiers. Does that have any bearing on this conversation?
Check-in modifiers is kind of where you find this in the documentation. So it's something you turn on. It talks about, there are some, oh, I don't have the whole thing pulled up in front of me, but there are some things that need to be configured. It says max foreign circulation time. I have no idea what that means, but there are some things that have to be configured as you do this. So it's not just a click and turn on thing. It's a conversation that you want to, I would say, have with Equinox to say, how do we get the settings that we want? I think my main goal, when Heather brought this up, is to let people know that at least it's out there, and then perhaps the CERC committee can do maybe a little bit more research. I think it's a complicated thing because we've already got the proximity setting stuff going on. But how does this all work together? And honestly, I don't understand it yet. I've kind of started talking the conversation with Lena, but I think if several of us on the committee kind of do a deeper dive and then bring it back. My question though is, if nobody's interested, why do the deep dive? If there are libraries who are interested, then it's definitely worth the time and trouble to try and figure out all the different moving parts there. So,
I think from this conversation, it is worth exploring.
I do
From
too.
what I'm hearing.
I do too. And I think the idea of being able to place holds for within those libraries, let's say Neosho does not have a copy of some new book for whatever reason, everybody else does. But being able to go ahead and put my person on one of your guys' lists, that once your age hold has expired, they'll at least be on a list. I love that.
that's a slightly different conversation, which goes, it's that right, the one placing holds on age protected items. I've had a quick conversation with Rogan. He was going, no, but I am just like, but maybe, because what I would like to see is, you still choose to have a 6-month age protection, but my patron could go ahead and put a hold on it. It's still going to do all of your people first. And at the end of that 6 months, they're already on the holds list.
Yes,
Because
please.
I hate having to tell somebody, well, okay, age protection went in on August 1st. 6 months from then,
Yeah,
you're going to be
well,
able to get
I'm
this
not going to
thing.
work here anymore either. So there's that. So, I mean, that's going to be part of it, remembering. So I
Right.
love the idea of it just sitting in a holding list. First come, first serve.
Right.
Yeah.
So I am going to I'm gonna start bugging them, I
Yeah.
guess, be the squeaky wheel on this, just because I feel like it wouldn't take age protection away. It would just be a way for us to go ahead and put our patron on the list, so to speak. And if you got a copy in the process, you know, maybe 3 months in, your library got a copy, they would go to that patron. So I think it's worth the potential pushback from Equinox. Now, if it turns into something that's going to cost us lots of money, that would be something for the board to look at. But
So was
Rhonda,
another,
is that
what-
only, are you talking about patrons not being able to be put on this list from the patron side only and not the staff side?
well, staff side, we're really not supposed to override that and let somebody put a hold on somebody's age protected items.
No, I feel like I have never been a member of this consortium ever. So I've placed holds on items that we don't currently, because let's say it's an on order record, and I go ahead and place a hold on something, knowing that we will get a copy, but I'm like, I'm gonna put my patron on hold, and that way when ours comes in, and that's never been an issue before.
That's
On
the
order
funny
doesn't
thing,
block you.
On order is not
right?
protected.
You can
So
put a
you're-
request, then you can't put a request, then you can put a request.
Because the
Gotcha.
on order
Okay.
items don't get age hold protection applied usually when they are created. So there's a brief window where it seems like it's almost like a loophole.
Okay.
I need to explore that more, to be honest. I don't mean to be introducing too many threads, but
well,
No,
another,
that makes me feel better because I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not how it works here.
right, right. I was thinking the same thing. So
Yep.
wait, I have a really quick question on the MLC. The other thing I thought I read is that they have their 1 month age protection, right? And
Mhm.
was part of this talking gonna be like we could all come to an agreement on that too? That we're all gonna come to the same age protection amount? No.
I don't know
I've
that
been
I-
using the 1 month.
Okay, I just wanna make
love
sure.
it.
yeah, I
I-
think we would not say, I don't think we would want to
Okay,
compel a
good.
library to do that. But if you wanted to combine hold to go home with the shorter age hold protection, I think it becomes more feasible with
Right,
hold to go
I
home in
love that.
place.
That's the
I'm on board
primary
with that.
value.
Yeah.
That's the primary value of the holds go home, is that you can have enough confidence that you're gonna
That's right.
have your materials available for your people, that you can feel fine to reduce age protection. And then
Yes.
all of us can request items and get on lists and that kind of stuff, instead
Yeah.
of going to request an item and, oh, my library didn't buy it, so now I am just told no,
Right,
right? Just no, ain't
Well,
gonna
and
do it.
even if it's just sitting on somebody's shelf, you're still told no.
right.
So I don't know. I'm wondering if there's some tweaks that we can do, and I think it's worth the conversation with Equinox. They're probably going to be, it's Rhonda again, calling me
Blame it
again.
on the
That is-
blame it on the newbies. We don't mind.
But
Rhonda,
I
we'll
just-
be happy to talk with you. I mean, the thing I don't understand is if your patron can't put a hold on the item, how do you know that you should buy a copy? And I mean, that to me just freaks me out, because sure, somebody can say, oh, that failed, I'm going to call you. Oh, look, I'm going to put a purchase request in, but that's probably 1 out of every 90 patrons. So you
Mhm.
have no idea that everybody in your town wants this book that you didn't buy because, you missed that issue of Library Journal or something. The idea that you can't put a hold on it, you're never going to buy that book. I
Yeah.
just don't understand how you can make that work. It just doesn't work.
And the smaller your library is, the smaller your buying budget, the more this limitation of putting holds hurts you. So
Mhm.
for big systems that buy everything, that may not even look like a problem. But for like my library, we don't have a big budget for books,
Right.
and we have to be very selective about what we buy. And so we're just locked out.
Okay, I saw somebody in the chat said they got to the meeting 10 minutes late. Can we just do a real quick recap of what we're talking about? Because we're kind of talking two things, maybe a little bit concurrently. So the first thing we brought up was the possibility of adding or adjusting our holds library by library, not consortium wide. There is a setting called holds go home, which would, can you explain it better, Heather?
I am happy to try.
Okay,
Hold to Go
good
Home
one.
is a setting on the admin side that goes, like Rhonda said, library by library. And what it does is it instructs Evergreen that if one of your patrons has a hold on a title, that your item should serve your patron first. So if your item has been circulating at another library, but one of your patrons places a hold on the title and there's no other copies available, then your library's copy will come back to serve your patron. The MLC is using Hold to Go Home in conjunction with shorter age hold protection rules. That way we can get our new items circulating out throughout MEC, but still feel that our materials are serving our tax-paying residents first, while still sharing freely. And I can put something in chat that's the technical documentation in case that interests you.
So then the other piece of the pie that we were talking about is being able to place holds on hold protected items. The things would still go to the owning libraries patrons first, but the hold would be placed so that when age protection dropped off, the hold would already be there and you did not have to tell your patrons, oh, you can order it in 6 months, or oh, you can order it in 3 months. So those were the things that we were discussing. And the committee is going to try and do some diving in on the Holds Go Home. And I'm going to try to chat with Equinox about placing holds on age protected items. So I think that's a fair summary of what we've kind of chatted about so far.
And
So
Ron,
what's wrong with using the override feature? Because I've done that plenty of times where I just hit override. That way it's on their hold list. It will show up on hopeless holds until the age protection expires. But, I can just tell, that's got age protection. That's why it's a hopeless hold right now. And I just leave it on that list.
That's what we do at Scenic. We still place holds if it has an age
That's
hold
good.
protection. So it's on the patron's account and we just explain, hey, February 1st, this will be up. It'll have to make its way down the list, but you're still on hold for it. So they don't have to sit there and keep track of everything that they want to place on hold that we don't have access to yet.
Yep, we do the
So,
same
so
thing.
you've changed the
staff-
system that you
Yeah.
have to place the holds and the patron can't? Like, let's think about that for a second. We're making work for ourselves. That's
So if they can't find something in the system, they'll ask us to look it up usually. And then we'll be able to see that it has an age hold protection. We'll explain it to them and then we'll just place it on hold for them. And then they'll just have to wait for it to become available from the owning library.
I don't think anybody's saying that that's what we want to do. We want patrons to be able to place their own holds. I think people are just saying that this is the workaround we're currently using,
got
and
it.
we'd love to stop doing that. So I don't think anybody wants to keep it in place and make patrons go through staff. I think the question was just, I'm doing this. Is this a problem that I'm doing this? Because I personally, just like Macy and Jake said, I do that as well. And it's not a perfect system. So I would love to see it removed. But that is the workaround we're currently using.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Got
but
it.
your things do go to the hopeless list, and then somebody has to monitor that list and replace the holds when you can. Is that how that is working?
No, you just leave them on there and let them know how long they're waiting.
So what we'll do, our system is that if we see that something has an age hold protection for 6 months and, it's only Cass County that has this copy, we'll send it to our collections person. We'll do a purchase request and see if they want to buy it, to see if maybe they have other requests for this book also, because the patrons can't see it. So then they'll just use the request materials link on our website if they're doing it from home, or they'll ask us. So we'll send in a purchase request for it anyways, and then we'll decide if we're going to buy it or not based on how many people have requested it, or if it's a topic that we know is going to go over well with our patrons. So we still have, it doesn't just go on the holds list. We also attempt to try to buy it if we can, so we can make it readily available to our patrons.
Yeah.
Rhonda, one thing I would encourage you is don't be bashful about talking to Equinox about this. We pay them big bucks to do this stuff for us.
It's true. It's
And
true.
And this shouldn't be, somebody mentioned the cost. I don't think this is going to be like a project cost. This is just going to be them throwing a switch. So I
I
don't think there's going to be I just don't see there being a cost involved.
Well, I'm going to work on it. Granted, we're going into Thanksgiving. I'm moving to the other place. We're talking December at least before I pick up anything on this again. So, but I'm glad we got the conversation started to see kind of where the majority of people are and how we're trying to. I mean, I think our goal is to serve our patrons, and the system is just not set up yet the way we want it to be able to do that. So let's see if we can get it there. Okay, Terry, you're next. More suggestions for MEC item condition reports.
Oh my gosh. This Terry?
You, Terry, yes.
Okay. I know we have a few Terrys out there and I didn't want to. So I keep going back and forth on our condition report where we're going to stick it. We can't use tape. We can't use glue. We can't use this or that. Duct tape, definitely we can't use. Kidding. But some of these items, it's almost impossible to attach the stupid condition report. So I found this tape. It's a Scotch removable tape. I'm sure some of you have seen this, but I have been practicing with my own items since I talked to you, Rhonda, and it never leaves a residue. I stacked a note with like 10 books on top of it and have left it till yesterday. Pulled the thing. The thing came off as if it wasn't even attached. It was almost like it was static cling to the book. And I just wondered if there's any chance anybody else would be willing to test it out and we could find out that we could use just this tape for some things. It doesn't have to be for everything. One in every 15 items is kind of a problem. But one thing that would really help is I'm putting a conditions report typically on your stuff. So that's where the problem is, right? If my stuff, I can use this tape all I want. But we want to send the condition slip home with our patron and expect them to hold on to this stupid little square paper. Most of them use it for a bookmark, but most of them lose it too, right? So that's all I'm asking is for that moment. This is not necessarily for currying back and forth. I would think we could get it to stick within the book for currying back and forth, transiting. But I wondered if we could approve something like this for all of us to use when we send conditions reports home with our patrons.
Is it the size of the report that's the issue? Because we have our own conditions report and it is half of a sheet of paper. So it's like super long.
Yeah.
And we stuff it in the book and say, hey, don't lose this. If you do, you might have to pay for something.
What do you do on a DVD or an audio book? Just fold
Same
it
thing.
up?
Well, we don't even fold it. We just stick it hanging out of the case and close the case.
I mean, that's a
It's
lot
not
of paper.
It's not a perfect system, but you know, it's if size is the issue, like you could even make 3 for one sheet just so that the length is there. I don't know. We just like to be pretty specific about damage and it's got our logo on it and everything. So I don't know.
Okay, so Belinda sent you a link, Scott. I'm going to send you a different one. The one on the website is printed landscape style. We've changed ours to where it is portrait style because it fits in the DVD better. So I'll shoot that to you too. And as you can tell, many of us have adjusted it to make it work for what I think most of them have the same information on them or close to the same information on them. They are just in different formats that work for your library. So I'll shoot you that after the meeting.
So you send these home with the patron?
Right. So
Because what we typically do is we put a note on the item. And then when they return it back and we see the damage, we can look at the item and say, oh, yeah, we know.
like an item alert.
Like an item alert.
You put an item alert on it. Yeah. That's serving the same. That's serving the same purpose for your patrons, but this is like for how I don't want to put an item alert on somebody else's material. So this is, I've got something from your library. It comes to us and I note this damage on it. Or when it comes back to me, my patron has, there's a dog-eared, some dog-eared pages. There's some, I've marked that so that when it comes back to you, you can see that as it gets back to you. And hopefully I'm not sending anything to you that is billable, but it's just letting you know what the damage is. If it's billable, I'm going to be keeping it, and calling you saying, unfortunately, my
It's
patron.
more to let the other library know that we received this way.
Right.
We're sending it back to you to be aware of. Maybe you want to note it or whatever you do, or maybe, whatever.
So is it a rule that we can't put item notes on each other's stuff? I mean, I would like to know if you see it damaged, and I'd like to be an item note.
We may not have permissions to, the MLC would for the MLC items, but I think it's a permit. I think it's a permissions issue.
All right, thanks.
So anyway, back to my tape thing. For whatever reason, if you guys will try this tape out and tell me what you think about it, because I love it. I've been here for a really long time and I finally found something that I can use in-house. I am using it for a lot of reasons in-house, but consortium wise, I think it would really be helpful.
Yeah, we've used removable tape at some of the other libraries I've worked at and for ours, and it works great. So I'd be totally fine using that for condition reports. I think that'd be better than slipping them into the books just because patrons will lose those, unfortunately. Would you want the tape to the front or to the inside?
Well, it's nice on the plastic
Right.
covers, better than the paper. It actually, it doesn't really matter because I've done
Right,
it
because
both
it
ways.
doesn't damage it. Yeah.
No, it doesn't really matter. So, but the thing is, I know it has to be something we all agree on. It has to be a consortium agreement and put in our best practices for blah, 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 so.
Where did you purchase it?
Amazon.
Okay. All right. And it's just Scotch removable
It's
tape.
Scotch removable tape. Yeah, that's it. It's in a blue box. That is another
Okay.
aspect of it. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
So, committee, how should we proceed on this?
Did you ask me that or who'd you ask that?
The whole committee?
Oh, okay.
Anybody?
Do we have to vote on it or whatever? Yeah.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, we can vote yes or no. This
I
is
guess-
something that would have to go on to the board, through, the general membership, because if we're changing.
Yeah. Well, we just had that approved recently, those, the best practices for identifying damage and even what it says about what we can and can't use on these notes and stuff. So I think it probably does have to go through some kind of approval process.
The question is, do we want it to go to?
Oh, I got you.
Okay, here's the deal.
I wanted to.
Committee, I am going to send you an email, poll you, see what you want, give you a minute to think about it, and then we'll proceed from there. Okay?
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks for letting me even be heard. Appreciate it.
I would also, just real quick, Rhonda, I would also add that, because I think it was at the last meeting or the meeting before that, and I can't recall the gal's name. I want to say she was from Polk County, was testing with the removable receipt printer tape.
That's what it was, yeah.
As well. So if you're going to be making suggested changes to your materials handling, that's also included in the approved method. Because I know that that's what they were attempting to do.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what got me thinking about this actually, was that conversation. Was that those receipts, those sticky receipts.
Okay, I'm making notes, or else you would think I could remember 5 minutes. No, big fat lie. No.
That lie. And it's that time of year.
Can I ask something quickly?
Sure.
I'm a little concerned about the price. I know the Scotch removable tape is fine, but I feel like then if we're adding this removable receipt tape, how expensive is that? Small library here.
Well, I think if we would decide to go with it, I don't think you would be compelled.
Okay, so it's just
to
a
do it.
suggested.
It would just be
It's just
something that
approved.
was approved if
Gotcha.
you
Okay.
wanted to use it.
Okay.
It would be
Yeah.
allowed, not
Oh,
Right.
required.
Yeah, and the
Thank you.
removable receipt tape or the removable receipt paper is actually already in our best handling practices
Yes,
that
it
we
is.
are allowed to use that on books, so that doesn't need to be added. And so Debbie,
Exactly.
that's just something that a lot of us are already using for other purposes. And
Yes.
so this other library said, oh, you can use it for this too,
Okay.
which some of us are choosing to do.
Well, and when books come in, I do see the receipt, the removable receipt, and I love it, but I just haven't investigated how pricey that would be. So, no budget, right?
Debbie, I can send you some information from me if you'll send me your email address. I will send you some information about removable receipt paper if you'll send me an email.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, there was also a discussion about multiple active library cards. When we came into the consortium, I can only say what we were told by Mobius, I don't know what anybody else was told, but they said one active card per person. But from the discussion, it seems like other people have heard maybe something different, or I'm not sure. So their patrons have multiple active cards at the same time. What are the positives of that and what are the negatives of that? And is there a best practice that we should proceed with?
So I will chime in because I'm one of those libraries that have multiple actives. This came about because we have a reciprocal borrowing agreement with Riverside Regional, our neighbors. And the way that we chose to set up our reciprocal is that our goal would be to have one account per person. So not that they would have a Riverside card account and a Cape account in the system where their name appears twice. We wanted those to be together. So we would merge the account, but we wanted both cards to be active. And that way, for the patron's sake, if they still have both cards in their wallet, they can walk in and use their Riverside card at Riverside. They come into Cape, they can use their Cape card. They could use and vice versa. But for their sake, they think, oh, I can only use my Riverside card at Riverside and Cape card at Cape. So we wanted that for the ease of that. We do choose which one to make primary, and that's based on, we gave the patron the ability to choose what their home location was going to be. That way it defaulted anytime they wanted to place a hold on something. So the benefit is mostly for the patron, just that they're able to monitor and track their accounts how they want to. The other benefit, which is not something that we necessarily publicize to the patron, but it does allow them more ability to use Libby, because it now gives them 2 active Libby accounts that they can place holds. And also we have, the reason why we also wanted to make sure that this was available is that Riverside has different content on Libby than we have. And so that way the patron still had as much access as possible. So that's why we did it our way. And I'll just leave it at that.
So Katie, I have a question. Does the Riverside, when you pull up your patron, does the Riverside, how do they, like when I have it, when I replace a barcode, you've got the list of what is active and which one is primary. How does it show when you are talking?
Yeah,
Like
so the patron can present either card, and if you scan the card, it's going to pull up the same, it's all on the same account, so it pulls up that one account. If you search by their name, it's the same thing. It will pop up. It'll list over on your left-hand toolbar there. It'll give you the brief summary of the patron. It will list those card numbers. So, it's all right there. It operates the same. It just means that both cards will retrieve that same patron.
What about borrowing rules? How
That's-
does that, like fines and stuff, how does that
It's all
affect?
based on where they circulate the material. And it would follow whatever the library, so whatever library they happen to be at, whether it's at Cape or at Riverside, doesn't matter about which card they use. It's which library are they checking out from. And it
Okay.
follows that
Are you
library's.
both ME libraries?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you
See,
know that? Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. I didn't mean to step
No,
over
I
you.
was
Go
just gonna
ahead.
say, our reciprocal library is not in Missouri Evergreen. Not in
Yeah,
our
and that
county.
it was actually a benefit to us. It's a long story about boundary issues and all that, but this was a major reason why we joined Missouri Evergreen, was because we knew Riverside was a member and it would solve
Oh.
a lot of our boundary issue problems.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because our reciprocal borrowers can't use our Neosho Newton County paid for apps because of the money. You know, we're not, so that would be complicated, so. Okay.
I was gonna jump in and ask, so whenever they sign up for either your library or your sister library, they still have to say, hey, I agree with all your policies. How do you indicate that? I mean, if it's just one single record, I just worry about like minors or AV checkouts or different things, but I guess I probably just worry too much.
So it depends on the situation. So if let's say the patron came in and they were already a Riverside patron, meaning they had an account within Riverside, what we would do at that point is we would make them fill out our application form, but we would not issue them a new library card. We would just allow them to continue to use their Riverside card. If they were already, if they're a brand new person, meaning they do not have a library card in the system at all, then obviously they just follow our regular application process. So that's where they're signing off on the rules. So if they are changing their home location and saying, I want Cape to be my main location from here on out, then they would have to sign off saying, I am following your rules.
Okay,
And
I think that
obviously
makes
they've
sense.
already signed off on Riverside if they're already in existence with Riverside. So they've already signed their rules.
Okay.
Right, any other discussion?
I have a discussion that's tangentially related. If it's not close enough related, it may be for next time's agenda. Regarding multiple library cards, two different things actually came up this morning. One being that I discovered a patron who for the last 20 years has been giving us various forms of her name and racking up fees, and then we catch it and we merge the cards. And so I was thinking about this person's parent who had their card stolen by, I think, the child, and they wanted it removed off their account. Will we have the ability to ever remove? Like if somebody says, hey, I got my wallet stolen, will we ever have the ability to just remove a barcode from an account? Like I think that was in the listserv this week.
Right, right.
Because one, there's that, but two, I was talking to my search staff about I'm working on the patron purge, but last year, between the time that I deleted all of the patrons that were 3 years or older with our fine criteria, which was in November, between that time and the time the Equinox purged everything, we had maybe 10 people come in that I had deleted with their old cards, which they couldn't use because those were still attached to the deleted accounts, which had not been purged. So we then had to issue them a new card for free, which cost us money. And so I don't know. Those are, like I say, they're tangentially related. They may not be worth discussing today, but.
So your question is, can we go back and remove a patron, their patron ID number?
Yes, like if
Um,
somebody has their wallet stolen, or
Okay,
that way we could just flat out remove it from the system. Or in a similar vein, if we delete a patron, that ID is still held on to the deleted account until it's purged, which
Correct.
causes us to have to issue a new card if somebody comes in that window. And I was shocked at how many people just out of the woodwork came in during that window because it's the holidays, right? So we have purged these people, or we have deleted these people, and then, oh, I'm going to go see my aging mother for the holidays, and I will just pay for a non-resident card, and here's my card. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, we can't use it. Anyway, just a thought.
Okay, questions, more questions for Equinox, I think, there. Okay, let's move on. Just a couple of things for message B. The email was sent out by Steve Potter yesterday saying December 2nd is the date that Equinox will mask that field asking for your cell phone carrier and remove the requirements for this information as part of the registering a patron process. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but next Monday we'll know. We're not going to need to do that any longer. So after some initial hiccups with it, we are now at about a 97 to 98% success rate on our messages going through. So I'm very pleased with that. Most failures that we found are happening because something is actually wrong with the phone number. Either it was entered incorrectly, or the patron now has a different phone number, or we've had a couple of things where the phone was not accepting calls. I don't know. Anyway, those were the main reasons that things were not going through. So as you are renewing patrons, it's always a good idea to check that contact information because that might even get that better. The other thing is, if your patron blocks that number, you cannot just go back in and say, okay, no, now we want it back on. The patron has to text the word start, the actual word start, to the text number for notices to be turned back on. So if your patron has blocked that number, not knowing where it was coming from, you have to text the word start to the text number in order to get back text messages coming. So that will be in the meeting notes that go out here in a few days. So that number, but if you have received one of those text messages, it's that number. So
hey, Rhonda, question on the phone numbers, that the messages that aren't going through because I think you said the phone not taking calls or whatever those reasons. In the past, I've gotten emails telling me that certain text messages didn't go through. It's usually because the phone number it's like a straight talk or something where they didn't pay their bill or something, the phone was turned off. But are we gonna get notifications like that per numbers? So we can go in and make sure our patrons have the right number?
hopefully. Right now, Steve Potter is getting a report. And so I don't know. I mean, at first we were getting a daily report, and so I think it's kind of slowed down to like maybe a week at a time, maybe. But that process, I think they're still trying to work out how that is going to work. But if we can get the list and send them to each library, then you could work on getting your own patrons updated. So
Right.
I can ask Steve again about where he is on that process. I know they were talking.
And then my other question was, I asked this earlier on, we didn't know, and maybe you said it and I forgot, but the entering of the digits, does it need to have the hyphen? Does it not need to have the hyphen? What was the
It's
outcome on that?
10 digits in a row, just
No
no
hyphen.
spaces, no hyphens,
Okay.
nothing.
If we put hyphens, is that gonna screw it up? Like, do we need to go back and fix ones that have hyphens?
Can Equinox fix them all?
I think, I don't know.
I feel like if it was an issue, our success rate would not be so high.
Would not have been as high as what we are at.
Okay, good. But going forward, just try to do it straight 10 digits.
Yes.
I
Okay.
can confirm we use the hyphens because that's just our standard, how I tell staff to do it, and our patrons are getting notifications just
Yeah.
fine.
For sure. For sure. Okay.
Does anybody
Definitely.
use the parentheses still? I don't think anybody does, but if they did, would that mess it up? I just think of all the random ways that our people manage to put different things in the computer.
I don't believe so because I had one staff member for some reason would put the area code space and then 3 digits hyphen, and people are still getting their
Okay, great.
notifications.
Thanks, Jake.
Okay, we're almost done here. This is your last reminder to get those deleting accounts done. Usually it's mid-January. So if, like Darcy was saying, you want to wait to, closer to the end of December to do that, that would be great. The CERC committee will not be meeting in December, so you will not get me reminding you again to do this. The date has not been selected yet. Last year was mid-January, kind of early mid-January was when it happened last year. So, all right, information for courier labels is on the agenda I sent out. Is there anything else that we need to discuss?
I have a question. I was actually going to send out an email over the listserv, but I thought, oh, we're having a meeting. Let me just ask it here. So we have books that we change the circulation rules that are considered holiday books for our youth department. And we limit how many they can circulate at a time. We limit their circulation time frame. And we do that based on shelving location. So anytime that there's a holiday book, we change it to the holiday shelving location, and then that makes the CERC rules work. What we're struggling with right now is making sure that all of the books that we want to be treated this way into that shelving location. When we were going through the migration and training process, it was recommended that we use a bucket. We create a bucket for all of the Thanksgiving books or all of the Christmas books or however. And then we just use that bucket to mass change the shelving location. The part that we're stuck on is that one staff member will create that bucket initially. They'll go out and share it with the other staff members, but the other staff members are not able to change that bucket. They're not able to add any new items to that bucket. Is there a better workaround, or are we not doing something correctly? Any help? Or do you guys do it a different way?
I do it the same way.
Being
They have shared
honest, Katie,
buckets, yeah. I'm not sure.
we don't use item buckets a lot, at least on my side of CERC. So this might actually be better for catalogers who probably do use quite a bit of item buckets.
Could
So
it
you
be
might,
I'm sorry. Could it be a
yeah.
permissions issue?
Maybe.
Like
I'm
of the
thinking the same
person
thing.
trying to, because I have multiple permissions because I'm cataloger, CERC, all that jazz. And I feel like our level whatever cataloger, sometimes she has trouble doing things just because the way Mobius originally set up our permissions, and we've been kind of working on that with Equinox and the various permission and sub permission types. So you might check the I want to say it's under oh gosh, local administration, where it has the user permission editor. And if you create an item bucket and you want like Bob Jones to edit it, you can type in Bob Jones's library card and you can look at all the permissions Bob Jones has and say, oh, look, it looks like they can't edit buckets, or I don't know if that's even a possibility, but sometimes stuff like that when they have access, but then they can't do all the things they should be able to do is permissions.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was a permissions issue, or if maybe the system just did not allow a shared bucket to be edited by anybody else
No,
besides.
you definitely can both edit. 'Cause
Okay.
Pam and I do it. She's in children's, I'm in circulation.
Okay.
We
I'll look
both
at
have the
then.
permissions though, so it's definitely that. It's gotta be.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging with us for an hour
Mhm.
and have a wonderful holiday. We will reconvene in January. So have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.